Okay, so here's our discriminant. If you look at the quadratic equation here, this is the discriminant. This part underneath the radical, this part right there, is the discriminant. Of course, you should have the quadratic formula memorized, but the discriminant is the part underneath the radical, and it's b squared minus 4ac, where a is the number out in front of x squared, b is the number out in front of x, and c is the number by itself, the constant. Okay, so we have three situations where we look at b squared minus 4ac, and one case is where it's greater than 0. That is, you get a positive number, which means you're going to get 2, because if you look back up here at the quadratic formula, it says plus or minus. Plus or minus right there means one time I'm going to add it, and the next time I'm going to subtract it. So if I get a positive number, that means I'm going to get 2 real roots. 2 real roots are real zeros, and those zeros are shown right here where they hit the x-axis. X isn't 0. You can see that x is out here, but y is 0. So that's why we call them zeros, or roots. And we have 2 of them, because one time we added a plus number, and the other time we subtracted a plus number, so we get 2. Okay, and then, let's see, we're going to say, what happens if I get 0? What if I do this and I get 0 right here? Well, if I add 0, if I subtract 0, not much is going to change, so I will get 1. And this is the kind of root that comes down and just kisses the x-axis, okay? Now, you can see, here's the y-axis. When y is down here, it's 0, right? So there's one place where y equals 0, and it's the only one. So we're kind of used to thinking about 2 places, like the first situation. But if b squared minus 4ac is 0, then I'm just adding or subtracting 0, and that only gives me 1 real root. Now, I'll put real, I'll make it look like that, real. These are real roots. Here's 2 reals, and here's 1 real. But what happens if b squared minus 4ac is less than 0? If it's negative, that means it's negative. Well, if it's negative, okay, let me go back up here to the formula. If it's negative, let me get rid of that. I'm taking the square root of a negative number. I can't really do that. And so, the fact that I can't do that, it's sort of backed up by the graph. You see where there is no contact with the x-axis at all. It's not touching anywhere. It doesn't come down and kiss it. It doesn't go through in 2 places. It doesn't touch. So there are no real roots. But there are going to be 2 imaginary roots. Okay, so I write 2i, because I is our little symbol for imaginary. And if you think about, specifically I means the square root of -1. But I'm just using it a little more generically, as just indicating it's imaginary. Okay, so find the discriminant of the quadratic equation and give the number and type of solutions of the equation. Okay, so here's a is equal to 3, and b, oh, they fooled me. Hang on just a second, they fooled me. They put something on the other side. I've got to get this back. Everything has to be equal to 0, right? Okay, so let's set this up the right way. 3x squared, subtract 13, that's going to be negative 6x, negative 24, equals 0. All right, now I can go ahead and do what I was going to do. A is equal to 3. B is equal to negative 6. And C is equal to negative 24. I can only do this when it's equal to 0, so you can see that they did fool me. Okay, so the discriminant is b squared. This is the stuff that would be underneath the radical in the quadratic formula. So the square, and I read it like this. I put the negative inside the parentheses, which means the negative's going away if I square a negative. You guys realize that if I say this is negative 36. So I don't mean that. I mean positive 36. Negative times a negative is a positive. So I'm saying subtract 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is negative 24. Well, you can see I have a negative times a negative, so it's going to be plus. So no imaginary number for me here. Let's see, I have 12 times 24. I need a calculator for that. I'm grabbing my calculator. 12 times 24. And I get 288. 288, okay. So I said 4 times 3 is 12 times 24. And then I'm going to add 36 to that. And my answer is going to be 324. And you know what that is? That's a positive number. So there's 2 real roots. And I'm going to write them like this. And I mean real. There's 2 real roots. That's my answer. If it had been 0, I'd have said there's 1 real root. If it had been negative, I'd have said there's 2 imaginary roots. Okay.